Hey, guess most of us has joined our second masterclass webinar today. So welcome on board. We'll have a half an hour packed with thoughts and ideas, and hopefully we're able to share some pointers how you can run more effective continuous concept testing. I'm Ville. I'm your host today, and as a leading expert, I have Lotta on the call. She's heading our customer success at Lean Lab, and Lotta's been helping numerous Nordic and global brands to develop services with users over the last 12 years or so. Welcome, Lotta.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And in the next 30 minutes, what we'll do is we first start with an example of how you can argue the value of concept testing, why it means serious money and business for your organization. Then Lotte will take us through our four-stage continuous concept development framework or a cycle. And then ultimately we'll share two use cases on how to run first impression tests and then dig deeper into testing concept features. Ultimately, before the Q&A end of session today, we'll also discuss the good and the bad way of giving users a seat at the development table. In our masterclass webinars, we focus especially on how to collaborate continuously with the users across the development journey. And we hope to leave you with concrete tips and tricks to work more systematically with users in each phase of the development journey, from the first idea all the way down to the execution and release. We call this the continuous learning blueprint. The continuous learning blueprint is based on the fact that iterating, experimenting with real users frequently leads to better business results, and then of course helps organizations better manage people, time, money, and ultimately business risks. Our focus today in our second masterclass series is we'll talk about more on the concept development phase of the development journey. If you've missed our first masterclass, you can access that on our Lean Lab website. There is a recording available under inspiration. It's more generic session about the whole journey of taking users through from the first idea to launch. And if you'd like to ask a question today, please do so and leave your questions at the QA box that you can find on the right-hand corner of the webinar software. And we hope to answer some of your questions at the end of the webinar today. Right, so let's start deep diving into the first topic. So the value of concept testing. I mean, given the economic climate, we'll need to ensure the ways we deliver impact to the business. And it's so important to show the value of the impact, particularly in the current economic climate. So how do you do that? How do you show the value in monetary terms of user research or concept research? I recently came across a quite nice article on LinkedIn about arguing the value of concept tests, and I'll take you through this example. So imagine that you're running concept tests for 5 different concepts. And when you start figuring out what is the impact, the business impact of those concepts, let's look at the results first. So what you see is the first concept gives you the best fit for the job. So it really is answering the problem that you're looking to solve for your customers, for your users. The concept 2 has some fit, but it's confusing, and probably 30% or so would likely to be contacting customer support to get the feature or that additional element in place. And then concepts 3, 4, and 5 didn't really resonate. So these are the results. Now, how do you calculate the economic impact of this. So first of all, let's start with how much you're helping your team to save time when you're focusing on the right solution. So the solution A, the first concept. So if you assume that you have a development team of 5 people, you have a few engineers, you have a designer, you have a product owner or project manager, and you assume that each concept would take about 4 weeks to build. So all in all, we are talking probably about 30, 40 days of joint development time from your team. And then if you factor in the costs per day per person in your team, we're probably talking about somewhere around 400, 500 euros, of course, depending on the individual salaries. But here we are assuming that, okay, there will be probably about an average of 5K salaries plus all the employment costs associated with that. So all in all, we are talking about a range between 12 to 16K per concept that it takes to develop. And if you multiply that by the 4 bad ones, if you went all in and developed them all, you would spend somewhere from 50K onwards developing wrong concepts. So that's the first thing that you save. You save your team's time. Then the next thing is to consider the opportunity cost. So let's assume that with the concept test, you go ahead straight away with the right concept, the concept 1, and you develop it. And let's assume that that particular concept helps you to make additional 100K a month, or it may be a churn reduction feature or element. So it will help you to keep your customers, and it will help you to reduce your churn 100Ks a month. So every month you take this opportunity or you don't take this opportunity will mean that you will win or lose 100K in the business. So that's your opportunity cost on a monthly basis of developing this feature. And the third dimension is if you consider maybe the concept 2. So you would randomly go and pick the concept 2, which had some fit, but ultimately was confusing for the users. And we got a result of 30% would actually contact the customer support about the concept 2. So if it was built, and let's assume that only about a third from the initial 30% would actually contact the support desk, it's still about 10% of your customer base that would reach out to you. Now, if your customer base, assume it's 100K customers, then ultimately 10% out of 100K is 10,000 more service tickets coming your way. So, and then if you assume an economic cost of dealing with each ticket, so essentially your support team comes with a cost, right? So you have people, you have the tools, you have the direct, indirect costs, and let's assume that that would be roughly somewhere about 20 euros per support ticket. So as you can see, 10,000 support requests then equals to about 200K that you can help the company to save when you're not developing the wrong concept. So what this means is that if you tally all the numbers together, you're actually helping the business to save about 350K onwards. And then please bear in mind that every month you don't develop the right concept, you end up losing more money in terms of churn or in terms of additional revenue. So this is the starting point. And the staggering fact is that this saving or this additional value just came in with one single concept test that you did for the business. Right, so now we've established how impactful the concept testing can be. Now let's discuss how we can establish a more effective testing cycle for concept tests. Lotta, would you like to walk us through your pointers on running effective concept tests?
Of course. Thanks, Ville. So if we start with the definition or what we mean by continuous concept development, it essentially means user involvement throughout the concept creation process, really helping you evaluate, iterate, and validate the concept as part of your development process. And when entering into the concept creation or concept development process, This is essentially when you've already identified a problem, and the concept development process is essentially encompassing the development of that concept before you move on to prototyping or launching or releasing the concept in question. But so some things to bear in mind when you develop the concept in the background in terms of setting your objectives is really understanding that problem solution fit. So while you've identified the problem, does your concept, so the solution, is it a good fit to these? And something, how to identify this can be through this Venn diagram of, first of all, understanding how the users perceive the concept. So is it something that they consider relevant? Is it a relevant way to solve that problem? Which user segments find it appealing? But in addition to this, it's really important to think about, is this something that we can really develop as a business? Is it a feasible development for us to do? But also then, what value does this bring to the business? Does it make the product or service more attractive? Does it help us reduce churn? And this goes back to what Ville talked about in terms of proving the value to the business. And these questions and this framework is important to keep in mind, even in the development of small concepts. So it doesn't really matter whether you're developing a small improvement onto an existing product or service, or developing a completely new product or service. This should still be in the background in terms of validating, are we doing the right things, and is it serving the users, but is it also serving us as a business? So then more concretely onto, how do you then continuously involve users through the concept creation and development process? And we highly recommend the following 4 testing cycles. These 4 testing cycles will ensure that throughout that development process, you are able to measure that problem solution fit, ensure that equation remains strong enough before you start prototyping or releasing anything to users. And this is essentially important as well, so you're able to abandon any concepts early on if they're not viable for you as a business, or if you need to clarify elements down the line. So what do these 4 steps then essentially mean? If we start off with the first impression of the concept, so this is essentially at a phase where you've identified the problem, you have a initial concept idea, but you need to then evaluate it with users. Do they understand the concept that you're suggesting? Do they find it relevant? Do they find it appealing? What kind of expectations do they have as part of the concept? And doing a first impression test or evaluating the concept early on will help you understand what needs to be clarified, what also take you on further on in the development process in terms of what the specific elements of the concept should be. How should it be more clearly defined as part of that process? Throughout these steps, we also highly recommend that you use both qualitative and quantitative methods in evaluating to ensure that you get the most insights to support the development process and really evaluate that problem solution fit. And is it something that we should be proceeding with as an organization? So after the first impression, if we're been able to validate the fact that this is a viable concept for us to continue developing and taking those insights, we've been able to start defining and clarifying the concept further. Then the next step is really defining the detailed concept elements together with your users, really understanding what elements they find most critical. So not just their expectations, but also what they find most critical, what brings most value to them, but also, again, asking that why, really understanding the why factors behind those motivations and needs is important to really support your development process. And as part of defining the concept elements, generally this phase of testing leads to several iterations of potential concept executions, which then takes us on to the preference between different iterations. So when you get different iterations of concept executions, it's important to also do preference testing. And again, in this phase, we highly recommend that you combine both the qualitative and the quantitative methods in running these preference tests. So not just understanding which iterations our users prefer, but also why they prefer these iterations, to really help you define and fine-tune and optimize the chosen concept to take forward. That which really best, again, has that strongest problem solution fit. So continuously going back to that Venn diagram and validating it against the objectives that you've set. And once we've been through the preference test phase, we come to the validation of the iterated concept. So again, once we've been able to define the clearer details and the potential execution of the concept more clearly, it's important to validate it with your users again. And again, then at the validation stage, start even more closely identifying which user segments it helps or supports or adds value to the most. But this is also a phase of the concept development part, which will help you take the concept forward to the next phases of development. As Ville mentioned, today we focus very much on the concept development phase, but after this is then the prototyping and the release phase, essentially. And the validation phase of the concept development will help you understand what do you need to keep in mind when starting to create a potential prototype of this concept. How do we really bring it to life to users, ensure that we're meeting their expectations and ensuring that we still have that strong problem solution fit at the end of this process as well. So if we then look at some examples of how this can more concretely be done, our first example is around the first impression stage. So as said, we have a concept idea to help solve a specific problem that we've identified, but does the concept really resonate with our users? So the initial concept idea that's been created based on discovery data, but the unknown then remains, is it relevant? Is it understandable? What's the level of appeal? What do we need to clarify? And what elements do we need to create interest and appeal? And this, for example, could be done with an online survey with open-ended questions involving 50 to 100 participants, where you ask really the first impression from the users. What do they like? What potentially raises questions for them? What causes confusion? So really helping identify what elements need to be clarified, but also including some light rating of the concept on appeal, relevance, and clarity. And doing a test like this will then really help you understand what stands out to users about the concept. So what elements are particularly important? What do they like? What could make the concept even more appealing? What do we need to clarify? But this test is also helping you learn and validate the concept as part of the process. Does the concept have legs? So does it get enough appeal from the get-go? Does it have enough clarity for us to really develop it further to bring value to the users and the business, for example, in attracting new users or reducing churn? And if it does, then you'll have some, does it need further clarification, or are you ready to move forward to defining the details of the concept itself? And that takes us on to our next example, which is related to the second phase. So really starting to define the smaller details of the concept. So at this stage, you have a clear definition of the concept, but you need to identify the smaller details. So what are the most critical elements for the concept? They need to be validated and prioritized. So what is, as said, critical, what's nice to have, and also, again, understanding why these elements are considered more important than others. And those why questions really help you dig into deeper and really give you support for for the further development of those concepts. And the kind of defining the detailed elements could be done, for example, using an online group discussion with around 20 to 50 participants, where you really start discussing with the users in more detail. I said, what's critical, what do they not necessarily consider relevant, or what is more nice to have, and what kind of concept would be most appealing to them. So what kind of addition to the existing service, or what kind of a completely new service would be most appealing to them, or bring most value to them as users. And the learnings from this type of test, again, is like what elements are most important and why, what kind of concept would be most appealing. And this will help you understand what type of concept executions could be most viable, what really best offers you the highest problem solution fit at the end of the day, and really kind of delivering on those objectives that you've set yourselves through that Venn diagram. So again, evaluating, does the concept still have legs? Do we have enough for creating iterations of the concept in terms of what the executions could look like? Or do we need more information? So this is important as you go through these test cycles, to also evaluate where are we now? What should the next steps be as part of that? Something to add here as well is that these concepts, or this concept development process, is not just for the big concepts, it's also for the smaller ones. And depending on your on the size of the concept, whether it's an update to the existing service or a completely new service, you can scale the tests that you run. They can be quick, small tests, even one question type tests. The crucial bit is just making sure that you're going through these steps and these testing cycles throughout that development process, ensuring that you're really bringing value to the users, but also the business.
Yeah, and I think it's important to, even if the tests are light, then you keep learning. So it's all about that continuous learning loop, and that's why we encourage people to test more frequently, even at the very experimental phase, rather than go all in with the development and then test too late. Thank you, Lotte, for walking us through your 4 pointers and then the 4-point kind of a testing cycle for concept tests. If you have any questions for Lotte, please use the Q&A box and drop your questions there. And like I said, we hope to answer some of the questions at the end of the webinar today. Before going into the Q&A session, I'm just going to change my screen a little bit and get a glare. Let's talk briefly about the good and the bad way of involving users in your development journey. And I really encourage everyone to start drawing your own blueprint. How do you bring your users currently in to your development process, and figure out ways how you can involve more users? Just to help you with that process, I outline here 2 blueprints for you to start your own internal mapping. So there's the Hippo blueprint and then the iterative learning blueprint. So let's take a brief look at these 2 blueprints. Hippo blueprint, as you can see, the axis, the x-axis marks the different. The x-axis, the y-axis kind of marks the user learnings as you accumulate your user learnings, and then the x-axis kind of marks the different stages of the development journey. And this example is called the Hippo blueprint, and the Hippo blueprint, Hippo stands for the highest income paid person's opinion. It's a sort of recently widely used term in scenarios where there is a person who always gets to call the shots in terms of making the next move, in terms of your design, in terms of your product, in terms of your service. And you can find the hippos grazing across your design journey. So the hippo will tell you where the opportunities are. They are quite fixed on their big ideas. They don't really care about the users. They think this is really helping us to deliver as a business. And then they tend to fall in love with their own designs. And then they start wondering at the end of the development cycle why things don't fly. And then they start shouting at people to make the design work. So this is something that we don't encourage people to do, because if you find yourself in this development cycle, it means that you start going out of sync with your user needs. You continuously keep wasting your precious resources, your cash, your time, and your people, your team. And ultimately, you gradually will start losing your customers. You'll have a higher churn, and you'll face a higher recruitment costs or acquisition costs for new customers. So instead, work towards a blueprint where you maximize the user learnings. And this is called the iterative learning blueprint. Compared to the Hippo blueprint, you work with users in every single step of the way. And that gives you much steeper learning curve from the beginning. If you compare those two curves, the red curve or flat line, and then the curvy blue line. And as Lotte indicated, you might want to start early and test frequently. Even if you are in a single phase, you want to be testing. Let's say you're looking at the concept phase, you want to be testing frequently in that before you move on to prototyping and then beyond that. And this way of collaborating and working with users is the only road to sustainable success, because it will help you to do sort of 5 things. It will help you to kill bad ideas early, which means that you're saving time and money. Going back to our original kind of economic calculation. It will help you to focus on the end user value, and it will help you to prioritize your roadmap based on the end user needs, not necessarily on the internal needs. Thirdly, it will help you to keep your development teams engaged and motivated, because they are able to hit the spot more often. They are able to deliver services and features and elements and experiences that really add value to our users and customers. And finally, it will help you to keep your existing customers. It will help you to fight back churn, and ultimately, it will help you to win or outdo your competition. Sorry about the glare. And in every company, you can develop your own iterative learning blueprint. It really doesn't matter what type of business you're in. If you are in B2C, in B2B, or in a public business, or work with physical or digital or combination of these products, every company has their iterative learning blueprint. If you'd like to exchange some ideas on how to design your own blueprint, how it might look like, feel free to reach out to me or Lotte. We're happy to share our thoughts and ideas. Right, I think it's time for a Q&A. Let's see if we have a few questions coming our way. There's a question from Avik in terms of testing Figma prototypes. So how does the Lean Lab platform connect with design software is essentially the question.
Well, the easy answer is yes. You can test design prototypes made with Figma on Lean Lab. With Lean Lab, these would be generally unmoderated tests, prototype tests that you can do directly on the platform. Many of our customers do, however, use essentially their communities to recruit then additionally participants to take part in moderated prototype tests. By combining the unmoderated and moderated Figma prototype tests through Lean Lab enables you to kind of more efficiently do that. You don't have to do so many live interviews, for example. You can gather more data there as well through the unmoderated tests.
Great. Sort of question that you partially already addressed, but is something that the 4-point cycle might feel that it's a sort of fairly heavy duty process, even if you're testing smaller iterations with your service. Why do you still argue that it makes a lot of value, and how do you simplify? Can you skip parts of the process and still deliver effective results?
I wouldn't necessarily skip any of the test cycles. I would still recommend having all four, but the tests themselves can be really simple tests. So depending on the scale of your concept also determines what style of tests you would need to do in those 4 testing cycles. So for example, the example we went through on defining the concept elements, we had an online group discussion, but that could just be a quick categorization exercise with some users to understand what elements they find important, for example. So it doesn't have to be heavy on your team in terms of running these tests. It's just important that you have checkpoints throughout that concept creation and the development process to really ensure that problem solution fit stays throughout that process. Often we see that if we test them at the beginning, but not through the rest of the development cycle, then the expectations of the users and what you've created can be really far apart at the end of the day. So we're not really matching that problem solution fit.
Thanks. A final question from Avik was to do about the participant recruitment. So how do we run these customer labs? Do we help our customers on the participant recruitment?
So there's a few ways to go there. So most of our communities are done so that the kind of continuous participants are recruited from our customers' own user base. So it can be from their app users, from the CRM, for example. LeanLab also offers what we call public links, so you can share those on any digital channel to get participants for the test that you're running. So they're the ways that the platform in itself already supports that. But we do have panel partners. So if our customers don't have access to the users themselves or need access to a specific target group outside of their current user base, we can help with the recruitment there as well. There's obviously always additional costs when it comes to panel recruitment too.
Thank you. That's all we had time for. I think the key takeaways from this 30 minutes is do consider how you measure the economic impact, the business impact when you're running concept tests. So it's not just about the features and fine-tuning those for the users, but it's also for the business. And given the harder economic climates that everybody is going through in their organizations, it's really underlying important to do so and make sure that you're trying to measure the impact and find arguments to do more work with users. It helps companies to save money and essentially make more money. And then secondly, we went through the 4-point cycle, and like Lotte said, you shouldn't skip different parts in the cycle. And it kind of goes for larger and smaller tests as well. And then finally, if you haven't already started and drafted out your own iterative learning blueprint, please do so that you can develop a more systematic way of collaborating with your users and customers. So with these tips, we hope you enjoyed. We hope to have a good day for everyone. And our next masterclass is coming up in November, and obviously we keep everyone updated when we have a date and a topic for the next masterclass series. That's all from us. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.